Welcome, everyone, to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg White, and joining me is Jason Pridmore. So, Jason Pridmore, how you doing, man? How you healing? How's the recovery? How's life?
Doing good, man. Just great. I did my first steps a few days ago, so I was pretty stoked on that. Overdid it a little bit, so just needing to chill a little bit on my leg. But I don't think I told you, but I actually chipped a tooth in this accident. My teeth must have chatted together, and I broke a tooth when I came home. I actually broke the tooth when I got home, but my dentist thought that it was probably cracked. So, and I've seen a lot of riders and racers nowadays using mouth guards, because I always thought about using one because I didn't want to chew on my tongue or something if I fell over. And now I'm a believer, so I had to go in and get a temporary cap put on. And then today I went and got the permanent one put on. So my face is no longer numb. I can talk to you now without drooling. So that's a good sign. And other than that, I was so pumped on the week because of all the racing that we had. And then we got another unbelievable week ahead of us. So, podcast wise, there's a lot of content for you and I to get to. So I'm feeling better and looking forward to this next weekend as well.
Good. So let's get right to the content, because before we get going on any of the race stuff, I want to let everyone out there know that there's great news from MotoAmerica. Their Live Plus package, which is going to be their live streaming package, that's going to have qualifying and practices and races, as well as a bunch of extra content. That's now up and available for pre-purchase. So for pre-purchase, it's $49.95 for the entire year. If you go to MotoAmerica.com, there'll be a tab there for Live Plus. Not only, Jason, do you get to pay $49.95 for the entire season, that you'll get Saturday and Sunday, all this great content, including us commentating the Liqui Junior Cup, the Super Sport, and the Superbike races, which will also, by the way, be on Fox Sports 2 if you don't decide to do this, but we recommend you do. But in addition, you'll get 20% off any MotoAmerica merchandise. And at select events, you're going to get 50% off of tickets, so you can come to the live event. And I mean, what better way to do it if you're at the live event, if you're sitting in a corner, that you can actually have, the races streaming on the Live Plus. After March 31st, which is 1 week before the first event, that price will increase to $69.95 for the season, or you could pay $9.95 per event. So it'll be web-based, and there is an app coming. So they're working on developing that app. So make sure you go to MotoAmerica.com and check out the Live Plus section, and go ahead and get signed up now and spend that $49.95. Because, Jason, what do you think? Smoking deal or what?
I mean, I don't know what else they can do. I think that this is what all the fans have been looking for. There's not going to be a real reason to complain about not being able to get it on TV, especially for those that haven't been able to get it on TV. And I've seen a lot of different comments about Sling and all these other things that they can do. Look, I do the MotoGP stuff. I think it's $135 a year. I do the World Superbike stuff. I don't even know what that costs, but I do that as well to get the content. And I think that what this is going to allow us to do as a commentating team, along with Dylan and Hannah, of course, is we're going to be able to tell so many more stories. We're going to be able to bring right to your living room or wherever it is during your day. You could be sitting there on a Saturday afternoon. You might have something on your TV that you're watching, and you can sit there and watch us as well, be able to interview the stars that we're trying to make in MotoAmerica. So I think that what they have done is tremendous. I think it's given us a lot of different platforms in which to get out there, especially with NBC, with Fox, and now with this paywall. I don't know what else they could do, Greg. I think it's great for our sport. It's going to get us a lot more mainstream. Hopefully, it's going to get a lot more people involved in our series as well.
Yeah, MotoAmerica.com. Look for Live Plus. That's what you're looking for. And get that money paid so you get the advantages of having all that content.
I'm looking forward to seeing what that's all about. I've had friends and stuff asking me too. But let's talk, Greg, about this week's MotoGP race. Now, before I get into the races, if anybody watched the races at all, if anybody watched them, you're going to notice Petrucci and Dovi with some archery things going. Greg, did you just lose your mind when you saw that? Did you lose your mind at the pre-race? I thought to myself, when I saw this stuff going on, I'm like, that's a little corny. And then I saw the archery stuff, and I'm like, it's almost like they built it for you.
Well, obviously I was frantically rewinding and grabbing screenshots and doing, and it was killing me because I was like, the race was so close. I was like, well, I can't be messing with this, trying to post on Instagram right now or Facebook or whatever. So it was kind of cool. It was cool. Obviously I went right into judgment mode. I was like, oh, I don't know if Petrucci's holding a bow the way he should be. And they're winning bows, and oh, look, they're Easton X10 arrows. I shoot the same thing. So it's pretty funny, but
well, do you think that if he looked at video of you riding, that he would go like, oh, I don't think Greg's quite doing that right? Or do you think you'd be pretty on point?
Well, I mean, I think
that's all we need to know. All right. That's all we need to know.
What? I think that they would say the same thing that Ruben Chow said in '99 when we got to ride together at Las Vegas. He said, wow, you're really a good rider. You're just slow.
Just slow. Yeah. Well, that's great. Sooner or later, all those memories will start to fade, Greg. I know you're getting ready to turn 50 this year, and it's like,
what?
Hopefully we can forget some of those memories as we get further along. But, we had 3 incredible races this weekend. The largest margin of victory was 53 thousandths of a second in Moto3, which is just, when you think of that, that's pretty amazing. But I want to start talking about MotoGP. And first off, I'm going to have you give us the results, okay? And then
okay.
I want to know, I'd really like to break down sort of the top 5 guys, and I have a couple very specific questions that I want to ask you. So why don't you give us the results first?
Okay, so in MotoGP, the margin of victory was 0.023. Andrea Dovizioso beat Marc Marquez, almost identical to last year. Now, just 0.3 of a second behind Marquez was Cal Crutchlow. 0.4 of a second behind Dovizioso was Rins. Rossi, only 0.6 of a second. That was your lead 5. Then we had Petrucci, 2.3 adrift. Vinales, Joan Mir, Takaaki Nakagami. He'd be the first of our non-factory riders, by the way, to finish in 9th. Then you had Espargaro in the Aprilia in 10th place. Morbidelli, Pol Espargaro, Jorge Lorenzo on the Repsol in 13th, and Iannone 14th, Zarco in 15th. Then you had Quartararo, Oliveira, Abraham, Rabat, and in 20th spot, Cyrene. Bradley Smith, Jack Miller, and Bagnaia did not make it to the end of the race. So, yeah, I mean, 5 riders within 0.6 of a second. Not the story of the race, though, was it, Jay?
Well, no, I mean, when I sat and I watched the race, first off, I was intrigued by the whole thing. It's so great to see so much close racing and seeing the field closer together. And, I thought the lack of attrition was tremendous. It just seems like a lot of people, and we'll talk about this a little bit throughout the classes, because you could take certain people that we can look at over the years, and I'm talking in all 3 classes again. It just seemed like people knew it was the first race, but nobody really made any big mistakes. A lot of the main guys finished. Nobody really left the first round with all the hype and stuff with a goose egg. And I think that was the first thing. But one of my first questions to you was, I saw a lot of comments on social media. I saw a lot of things about this race. Was this a great race? Was this a race that we're going to look back and we're going to remember, oh man, the Qatar Grand Prix of 2019, that's really going to go down as one of the great races?
No, of course not.
No, I mean, I'm just asking. I'm asking you more for your opinion than anything else. I mean, I think it was a tremendous race.
Okay, you think it was a tremendous race, but
it's not like a memorable one, right?
Right, because there wasn't a lot of passing for the lead, and to be honest, the total race time was 42 minutes, 36.9 seconds. And after going back and looking, Jay, I mean, it was, I don't care if it's by 2 seconds or by 8 seconds or whatever it is. It's one of the slower races that we've had in the last 5 years at Qatar. I mean, it wasn't like Dovizioso set the world on fire and then everybody was chasing him with their hair on fire. It was like they just couldn't pass him, And we're going to talk about that much later in the show.
For sure.
They couldn't pass him. And I just don't think it was, I think Rossi's march from 14th to 5th was unreal. I really do. I think Crutchlow being hurt and finishing 3rd is great, but it's not one where I'm going to look back on and say, oh man, 2019 Qatar was crazy.
I feel a little bit weird about. I feel a little bad about for Dovey. And it sounds crazy, I know, but I want people to understand my point of view. Is that I feel that I picked Dovey to win the race, as did Chad, which was great last week. But there was a reason why that we felt that way. And what you have to remember is, as a rider, it doesn't really matter why you win. If you win, it goes right back to Batista at Phillip Island. It doesn't matter why you win. You won. You did a tremendous job. You rode great. You did all that stuff. I feel like I was trying to think of a race where Dovey won that wasn't kind of known as somewhat of a Ducati track. When last week when we had Chad on and he picked Dovey to win as well, the reason why was this big long front straightaway. And we kept on hearing all weekend that the Honda had speed and it was fast. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching Marquez follow him down the front straightaway every lap. And I'm thinking, you can't really draft him. And then Rins or somebody would get by and it was like the Ducati was going by him halfway down the straightaway. Dovey's insanely incredible. I mean, I feel the guy's top class, but he's on a great bike, and he's a tremendous rider. But the race was so slow. It was so slow. Like Rins was frustrated after the race because I think he had a lot of pace. He sliced and diced through everybody early, and Dovey actually said in the press conference that he didn't want Rins to lead, and he thought that it was too early for Rins to go past and burn up his tire and yada yada. Well, the problem is that when you're on an underpowered bike like Rins, you're burning up your tire more by following than you are by leading, because you're trying to get on the straightaways as hard as you can with the bike in front of you that's pulling away. And I think if Rins gets through and leads into turn one on the first lap, on any lap, I think Rins breaks those guys a little bit. And I think he had pace because the pace was so slow. He never really got that opportunity. The reason I was asking that question about the race, Greg, is because it was such a strategy type of race that Dovey rode, which he was brilliant at doing. I mean, he just did such a good job at controlling the pace. But it wasn't like the greatest race I ever saw.
No. It's the old saltine cracker situation, right? It's like if you're starving and you hadn't had anything to eat and someone gives you a saltine cracker, you're like, man, this is the best cracker I ever ate in my life. Yeah. And then after 10 crackers, you're like, damn, it's just a damn saltine. And that's the thing. I think when you're starving for racing, we've been off for 4 months, hadn't seen any action, that you have 5 people and more. I mean, it was a freight train of 10 people at one point, or a couple different points. So you sit there and go, wow. But, to me, a good race is going to be people battling for the lead and people throwing shots at people
at full pace.
At full pace. And, look, here's the thing. 2016 has the best race record, okay, at a 154.9. That was Lorenzo 16. So think about how much is supposed to have changed in 17, 18, 19 in terms of engine development. Electronics have gone back and forth, tire development from Michelin, all that kind of stuff. Quartararo, after having starting from pit lane, did a 55.0. So literally within 1 second, it was like 1/10 of a second. 55.039. The record is a 54.927. But the thing is that Quartararo did it with nobody in front of him. He did it the way the Yamaha needs to do it, the way a Suzuki needs to do it, which is he can get into the corners deep as he wants. He can roll through it as fast as he wants, and then get on the gas when he needs to, as opposed to it being dictated by a Ducati. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that what Dovizioso did was he just completely dictated the way, not only the pace, Jason, but he dictated the way like everybody behind him had to ride.
Which when you think about it, the race strategy going in and knowing that the tires kind of will get burned up pretty quickly around that place. It's at that place more than anything. Like when you look at how badass these bikes are, for me, I want to see everybody riding, I want to see everybody riding hard. And I hope not being a downer, I just hope that the MotoGP races don't just turn into only just a tire conservation or fuel conservation mode type of racing. Because man, to have all those guys at the front was crazy. And there's a couple things that that I looked at to really back up the statistics on this stuff is that when you look at who finished 15th, like you said earlier, Johan Zarco, he finished 15th on the KTM, and he hasn't really been close this year. In fact, he's been about a second and a half off at every track they've gone to, Greg. He only finished 15 seconds behind the leader, at the end of 22 laps. So he finishes 15 seconds back at the end of the race. And I think the sad truth is that you can look at a Zarco, Iannone, even Paul, the 12th through 15th, even. Those guys are all riding their asses off, right? They're trying as hard as they can.
Yeah.
And the guys up in the front are a second, let's just say, or half a second off of what they could probably run. When you look at the qualifying time, I think what was it, Greg? 53.3, 53.5, somewhere there, I believe is what it was. And Dovey had like the sixth quickest lap of the race. He went 55.3.
So
controlling
53.3 was Marquez this year as an all-out lap record. That was, I believe, an FP2, but the pole record is a 53.5. So you're dead nuts on there. So you're talking about a race pace that's 1.5 seconds slower. And MotoGP doesn't have cues like we have Dunlop, cues. They just have softer rubber. So that shows me. Not like I'm saying race pace should have been 53s, but
correct.
You think at all this time later, since 2016, when Lorenzo set the fastest lap at a 54.9, I'm thinking that at least race pace should be 54.8s, 54.7s.
Yeah, you would think that they would dive into that deal. And I'm trying to think how many laps Dovey did not lead into turn one, because really that was the key. He led into turn one. So even guys that could get the draft down the front straightaway that might be able to get through turn one and turn a faster lap never really got that opportunity. But Dovey just did incredible job once again. Ducati comes out and wins the first round of World Superbike. They come out and win the first round of MotoGP. And I bring that up because Qatar to me, Greg, it kind of reminds me a little bit of what we saw at Phillip Island, where it's kind of a special race, right? Because Doha's a little bit different than kind of anywhere else. I mean, they race at night, right? Which makes it already different in and of itself. They were worried about dew points getting down, and that's why they wanted to have the race pushed a little bit earlier. I mean, the Moto3 race ran in the sun. And so there's definitely some differences in how this race is. I think that make it a little bit like it. And when you look at where the top 15 guys are, 15 seconds separating first to 15th, we're not going to see that kind of distance. In fact, I would dare to say that will be the only race all year that we'll see the top 15 separated by such a close margin.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And I think part of that has to do with the fact, like you're saying with Phillip Island, they just tested a week ago or whatever it was at Qatar. And so everybody comes there confident that they have settings, that they're, and even the new riders are familiar with the track, familiar with the setting. Yeah, I agree. And I could just go back and look at some results from last year and probably prove your theory. So if you look at I don't know, let's look at Le Mans, for instance. Le Mans last year, which was round 5. If you look at the race, 15th finished 41.9 seconds away.
There you go.
Just as one example. But anyway.
And that place has, Qatar is very flowing. So it's a track where there's not a lot of pull the brake lever on, turn it, stand it up, go to the next straight, pull the lever on, stand it up, and all that kind of stuff. So a place like Le Mans that you just mentioned, another track that's very flowing is Assen. So that might be a place where you'll see that distance come down a little bit as well, because it's a very flowing type of racetrack. Okay. So these guys then, rider to rider, can keep corner speeds up. And when you hear Dovey talk, he talked about Rins getting in front, and he could not believe the corner speed that Rins had. And he said that's where we struggle on the Ducati. So even though people might look at Dovey as the guy that can control certain aspects of the corner, it's not because he doesn't want to get through the corner faster. It's because the characteristics of the Ducati, he has to ride it a certain way. So he's leading the World Championship, going to Argentina just like he was last year. Tremendous job. Let's talk about second place, current world champion Marc Marquez. All weekend long, we keep hearing the Honda isn't, really suited for Doha. It's not a great circuit for Honda, but every year he seems to come out of here with a chunk of points, finishes second, right behind the leader. Easily could have been swapped at the end of the race, no matter what. I mean, the guy took a chance again in the last corner against Dovey, but another incredibly intelligent, smart race by Marquez, and this is why I feel that it'll be hard to beat him again. He just has that ability to. The race was slow. He said his shoulder was no problem. His physical fitness was great. Didn't even look worried about anything at the end of the race. What do you think of his performance this week? He didn't look stressed at all, did he?
Marquez?
Yeah.
No, he didn't. I mean, he just looked in control. I think the thing about Marquez was we knew it from FP1. He just looked like he was ready to go for it,
Yep.
Like he had almost like he had something to prove. Like he listens to the hype and everybody's like, oh, he's going to be hurt. And I mean, even we said it, even Chad Reed said it last week. He's like, I'm not sure if Mark's really going to stick his neck out because it's the first race of the year. He's still recovering. You don't want to risk it. But I think also the pace allowed him to not have to stick his neck out either, as opposed to really throw it down. I thought Mark looked great. So, Jay, let me ask you this, though. When you look at a Marc Marquez coming back from injury, you look at Crutchlow coming back, who was third, a Rins being as close as he was on a Suzuki, Rossi plowing through whatever. There's a bunch of stories here.
Yeah.
If you had to pick most impressive, maybe 1, 2, 3 or whatever, who was the most impressive to you in MotoGP this first race?
For me, that's the absolutely easiest one that you could ask me, because there was 4 of these guys that I figured could be there before the weekend started. I think Cal Crutchlow, coming back from a big injury, limited amount of testing, came back. He's got a right broken ankle that he's not able to kind of get on the rear brake the way he would like. He's played around with a thumb brake, but he overuses that too much. I think him finishing third, I don't know of anybody, with the exception of my friend Tyler Olmstead, who picked him in his MotoGP pool. I don't know anybody that would have picked Cal Crutchlow on the podium this weekend. I didn't have him on the podium. I honestly, I don't even have him winning a race this year in my last week when I had to pick the 6 that I had to pick. I didn't see it coming. But again, it looked like a super in control. Let's see where this race is going. He said in the warm up that morning, or Sunday morning warm up before the race, he was 13th or 14th. Didn't even think about pole position. Said his ankle was no problem. It sounded like he got a foot peg to the ass at some point, because he said his ass was numb on the left side.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And it was a very downplayed Cal in the interviews as well. You could just really tell that in a roundabout way, he was just really, you could tell he was really happy to be third. I don't think it was something that was expected. That would be my biggest surprise in the top 5.
Okay, you've raced at Qatar before. You know Qatar well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, physically demanding on a 1 to 10 scale, say, versus a Barber here in the States or a Infineon or Sears Point race, whatever the thing is called now. How physical? Yeah, how physical is that racetrack?
It's only physical because it's got a lot of back and forths. There's a mid part of that track where they come out of a right-hander, which I believe turns 7. You come out of this right, then there's a little kink back to the left and another right, and then another left. That's actually pretty physical because you've got to kind of get a downshift done, and it's a passing spot. And then you run into this big, long, fast left where you could see smoke coming off these guys' tires towards the end of the race. That is just the funnest part, and you go into these big, fast, long rights. But when you kind of say that the race pace was a lot slower than what these guys thought they were going to go, definitely takes the heat off of you as far as the strenuous part of it. We did World Endurance there, and I can honestly say I don't remember, after being out on the track for an hour at a time, that I was ever just completely whipped like I would be at some other tracks. There's not like a ton of heavy braking at Doha. You come down into turn 1, and that's really your heavy braking spot. And so I think that definitely, I don't think it's like a super physical type of track. But there is some back and forth, but that's about it.
Yeah, because I mean, I know what you're saying, that Crutchlow is the most impressive for you. I'm going to say he's not for me. I understand he's coming back from the injury, but I saw Miguel Duhamel literally get lifted, out of a chair onto a motorcycle by his crew and went out and win the Daytona 200. I mean, the guy could barely walk, and I'm just convinced that there are some injuries that you can ride with, that you can't normally do. Meaning, like, you could barely walk right now, but I bet you could ride a bike. So I think I don't know. I'm kind of torn because on one hand, I really liked what Rins did. I know he didn't close it and
Amazing.
and be able to stay on the podium, but
Yep.
0.4 of a second, I thought it was a really incredible ride. I think Rossi deserves a nod, like maybe an honorable mention for most impressive because he qualified 14th and he worked his way all the way up to fifth spot, and
Saying that
he
real
didn't quite
quick.
have it. But
Yeah. But saying that, I agree with you 1,000%, by the way. But saying that, it was kind of my feeling that if Rossi would have qualified on the front row or if he qualified 14th, I think he'd have finished in the same spot.
I actually agree with you, and it not any fault of Rossi's.
No,
I
not
just
any
think
fault
if
of
you
his
look
at
at the Ducati,
all.
it's a bet.
No,
You know what I mean? Like if you look at the
agree with you
Ducati,
100%.
Ducati seems
Yep.
to be a better bike.
Yep.
The Honda seems to be a better bike. The Suzuki
Yep.
seems to be a better bike, and the Yamaha does not.
I think that the only
It
thing that
doesn't.
would have been
And
different,
if you look at it,
yeah,
no, what I was going to say is that if you look at the race pace from last year versus this year, if it is the Yamaha, it hasn't changed, then Rossi's kind of right where he should have been anyway.
agreed. I think that the only spot that he might have been able to keep, he might have jumped up to fourth, possibly because maybe Rins would have never been able to get by him, especially if Rossi gets a good start and all that stuff. For me, the Yamaha did not look any different than it did last year. So as soon as the race was over, I sat there and I thought to myself, okay, Vinales has fooled us all once again because he's been fast in testing everywhere they go. He's got on pole, great. And he was nowhere in that race. Like nowhere. Like nowhere. And he just went straight backwards. Sure, he only finished 2.4 off the win, but again, it's another race where Vinales does this thing. Maybe the bike isn't that good with a full fuel load, and it takes him a little while. And I get that. And they talk about acceleration issues and stuff. To me, when I look at the Yamaha and I can even look at the Suzuki and kind of put them in the same boat, both of them look like they were down. And people, you can't sit there and look at the top speed of each one of these bikes because they get in drafts. And that's what, again, nobody was drafting past that Ducati this weekend, even though everybody's like, oh, the Hondas, Marc Marquez had the quickest trap speed of the weekend. He went 220 mile an hour. I get it. But we don't know what lap that was. We don't know whose draft he was in or not. So you can't just look at overall top speeds. So when you think about that, the reason why I say Rossi, it doesn't matter if he would have qualified 18th. I think he would have finished fifth. I think he would have just got through people and that kind of thing. But the Yamaha, to me, when they talk about their acceleration issues, then they also talk about their grip issues. And I'm not a MotoGP expert by any stretch of the imagination, but when you don't have acceleration, you get on the gas earlier. When you get on the gas earlier, you tear up your tires a little bit differently, as opposed to somebody that can roll through the corners and do whatever they, and not have to get on the gas as early. So they're probably having problems with their electronics and with acceleration, getting the power to the ground as well. But the Yamaha just, when he crossed the finish line in fifth, I'm like, well, that bike looked exactly like the same bike he had last year. It didn't look any different.
And that's the comments he made post race. He said, I don't think our bike's any better.
Yeah. And I found that out a couple days later after, actually, it might have been this morning or yesterday where I saw he basically said it's really not any different. And I think that, Ducati historically over the last 5-6 years has been known to have the fastest bikes. But what I don't understand, maybe you can help me here. What I don't understand is why hasn't everybody else built faster motors?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I mean, I don't know. And here's the problem with the electronics age, Jason. I don't know if the motors are any faster or if Ducati's just done the best job of getting the power to the ground.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like, I don't know. I can tell you that Dovizioso used the strength of the Ducati to win the race, no doubt. I mean, I think that he was slower mid-corner oftentimes and then got the bike up on the meat of the tire and drove out. And I think that was part of the key to success to some of these other bikes that require a little bit more edge grip because they're on the edge of the tire more trying to keep up with the Ducati. So I think Dovizioso did exactly what the Ducati was designed to do. But the only way Dovizioso could do that was from the lead.
Yeah. No, he was pretty masterful. And when you talk about Rins, like we've kind of talked about the top 5 now. When you talk about Rins, I think that for me with him, he's just going to be that guy that all year is just going to be in this top 5, pounding out the results. Like I'm still not sold on the fact that we're not going to see Dovey back in 6th at a race. Like I don't even know what it would take to. I don't know what it would take to have 5 guys beat Marquez where Marquez finishes 6th. The only way Mark Marquez finishes 6th on a weekend is because he screws up. I don't like. I can't see him finishing 6th. Like I can see 5 guys beating Dovey somewhere along the line, somewhere this year at some race. I can see Crutchlow finishing 6th. I can see, well, Rossi got 5th here, but I can make an argument for everybody else finishing out of the top 5 that finished in the top 5 this weekend. And I cannot honestly say that I see Mark Marquez ever finishing out of the top 5 unless there's a major problem. And that's going to be the problem for the rest of the field.
And that's why I don't think any one of us, you, myself, Chad Reed, didn't pick Mark Marquez to win the championship because he's just strong everywhere. And
he's laughing after the race, like, oh, it's not a good circuit for my bike. And I'm thinking, you just finished 23 thousandths of a second off the win, and it's not a good circuit for your bike. And I don't really know where that comes from. I think I hear all these interviewers saying, "Oh, this isn't supposed to be a good circuit for the Honda." Well, you had 2 Hondas finish on the podium. One of the guys hardly got any testing done. And the reason why I picked Crutchlow is because I think that there's a point where it wasn't so much the physicality part of the track that I looked at what Crutchlow did. What I looked at was he had such a badly broken ankle, Greg, that he had external fixation, and you go through that stage as a racer. And I can't imagine at the very, very top level of MotoGP you go through all this stuff and you see everybody testing and you see all that stuff. I saw an interview with him that said it didn't bother him that he missed the races. What bothered him is that he was worried how he was going to be affected with the rest of his life as far as walking. And I can relate to that a little bit. But the guy didn't test. And this kind of goes again, like you see all these guys testing and how important it is and this and that, but you never really lose speed. And the Honda, to me, maybe is a little bit better because Crutchlow, he never looked at risk to not finish on the podium. He just looked super comfortable there, and he looked very matter of fact. He didn't look like, I was really impressed. I think Crutchlow, he actually could be, if he rode the way he rode at Doha, where if he's up in that lead group and he can kind of figure out a way to just stay there, I think I could make an argument for that guy being top 3 in the points this year. But I just feel like there's another thing that happens to him when he's 7th, 8th, 9th, where it's just going to be a matter of how many races he doesn't finish if he makes mistakes. That's what he's done in the past. But if the bike's easier to ride, if the Honda's better for him, I think it could be an interesting season. The last thing I want to bring up to you is another thing I kind of noticed and I observed over the weekend is the way MotoGP does their qualifying. You got qualifying 1 or qualifying practice 1, 2, and then 3. And I really think that a lot of these guys and that have been there in each one of these tests. So we've seen Quartararo do very well. I mean, kid qualified 5th. It was a shame to see him stall on the grid. Joan Mir qualified kind of up there as well. Kind of like the new wave of guys, Morbidelli's and that kind of thing. This qualifying 1, 2, 3, Greg, I think it makes it harder for these guys to go out and really work on long runs during their weekends. And I think that you hit the nail on the head with something with Doha, that these guys all tested there a week and a half ago. It'll be interesting to see how some of the new guys do as far as trying to get in that top 10 for qualifying practice or qualifying number, to go right to qualifying 2. And in the top 10, it'll be interesting to see how some of these rookies react then, because I think it's going to be important for them to put more laps in at tracks that they haven't got to test at. So they've tested, where have they tested, Greg? They tested at Sepang. They tested at Qatar. So I think when you go to like a place like Argentina or Coda, it'll be interesting to see if those same guys can get up in the top 10 like they did it this last weekend.
Yeah, because really, if you look at it, QP2 was the only opportunity. It was the best race conditions. They knew it because QP3 was going to be earlier in the day, and it just wasn't a similar condition. So all the emphasis was on QP2 session. And that's why you saw the outright fastest lap ever was done in a practice session. I don't know how many times that's been done. I wonder if I could send that off to Martin Raines, who's the retired statistician for MotoGP. But, in terms of like, if you look at it, the outright fastest time ever set at Qatar by a MotoGP bike is actually done in practice, as opposed to usually they're done in qualifying. So, but that's why they have the three different stats. They have the best race time, the best qualifying time, and the best outright lap record because of that. But that shows you where the strategy was for Marquez just getting into, qualifier 2, Q2 because of that. And Rossi was way out of it, and he knew it after the second practice. He led the first practice. Second practice, he's what, P14 or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, well, now I have no chance of getting in. To
Yeah.
qualifier
Yeah,
two.
because the
Like,
conditions are so much different. Again, it goes back to Doha, doesn't it? Like different schedule, different everything. So that evening session on Friday evening was the one, because Saturday, what happens at Doha, which is fun and kind of different. It's always been like that ever since I went there. Was it in the afternoons? It just kind of it blows. Like it just gets really windy all the time, and and the sand blows on the racetrack and so on. And then once the sun goes down and the lights go on there, it gets a lot calmer. It's such a strange place to go if you've never been there, because you could see the city from the track, but it's so far out in the middle of the desert, and it's just a different place. But yeah, Rossi knew, didn't he, after the second, after Friday night QP2, he knew he was kind of out as far as not being able to go quicker the next day. As was
but
Lorenzo.
Then Sunday came. But then Sunday came and Rossi woke up like he does. All right, let's go to Moto2. In Moto2, Lorenzo Baldassarri on the Kalex won by 26 hundredths or thousandths of a second over Thomas Luthi and Marcel Schroeder. Remy Gardner in fourth and Fernandez in fifth. Lowe's was sixth. Marquez, Alex, the brother, in seventh. Marini in eighth. Bastianini in ninth. And Vierge in 10th. What'd you think about this race? I mean, for me, it wasn't like the most spectacular race in the world until about the last two laps. And then it almost became a really great race.
Well, yeah, Lorenzo Baldassarri, and this is something that you see trending a little bit with, this is something that you see definitely trending with guys in this class that stick around in it for a while. This is his third or fourth year, I believe, in this class, and he rode like an absolute pro. Thomas Luthi coming back, I thought was a very impressive ride. I mean, you're talking about a guy that won the Moto2 championship, went off to MotoGP, did not score a point. Like, didn't score a point, Greg. He went all year and couldn't crack the top 15. So then he comes out and finishes second, and we'll talk about the finish of this race in a minute. But I think I say it every week. People probably get tired of me saying it, but there was a lot of people that probably wrote off Tom Luthi. This guy can't ride a motorcycle. Yeah, he won the Moto2 championship, but he can't ride a motorcycle. Look, he didn't even score a point. Goes right back. If you don't have a crew and a team and a bike underneath you, Thomas Luthi can ride with anybody, I'm sure, but he just didn't have the equipment. And when you hear people talking about like, oh, such and such won't come race, won't come race MotoGP on a satellite team. Well, this is why such and such won't race on a satellite team, because if you get stuck on the wrong team with the wrong crew and bike, you don't get a point in MotoGP. How fun is that? So the fact that the guy came back,
long season.
It's a long season, but Thomas Luthi will be there, and his teammate Marcel Schroeder, who qualified on pole, finishes third. I thought the most impressive guy out of all of them was Remy Gardner. He's on a better team this year. This kid broke both his legs. Obviously, he's son of Wayne Gardner, who won the 500 Grand Prix championship season. I know the year. Do you know the year, Greg? It's a little before your time. 1987.
86.
87.
Oh, okay. All right.
You're close. Appreciate that. But yeah, Wayne Gardner won the 500 Grand Prix championship, and then Remy, his son now, I think is man, he just looked good. I noticed that there just seemed to be less franticness in some of the guys that we have seen not do such a great job in the past of controlling emotion while they're riding. And Remy's one of those guys. But now he's on a good bike, and now he's on a good team, and all of a sudden now maybe running up at the front's a little easier than running on kind of some of the bikes that he ran on in the past. And I thought the race was good. I thought if people go back and watch the Moto2 race, that Luthi just kind of screwed up the last 4 turns of the race. He had the race won. I mean, without question, he's going to be able to draft the biggest guy probably in the paddock on a Moto2 bike is Baldassarri. And Luthi, once he caught him, and he caught him on the last lap, when you go through those last 4 or 5 turns, there's a left-hander 2 turns from the end of the lap, Greg. And he closed his entry off so early that he kept up no mid-corner speed. So he wasn't even able to get on the back of Baldassarri on the short shoot down to the last right-hander. And then he opened up the entry to that and closed up on the back of Baldassarri so hard that he almost probably had to get out of the gas a little bit because Lorenzo had gone in there tighter. And I just thought that, maybe Luthi was excited, obviously not being in that position in a while, whatever. But I really thought he won the race once he got on the back of him midway through the last lap. Did you watch it? Did you watch the last lap?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was screaming at the TV as, because the kind of the way it was being commentated, nobody was really catching on to the fact that, I felt like Luthi had the race won. And then he just kind of botched the last 3 turns. But it has to be a huge confidence builder for him, only finishing, what was it, 26 thousandths of a second off?
That's it. Now,
Yeah.
what do you think? You think that the Triumph motor is an easier bike for some people to ride, or do you think it's just the team with Remy Garner? And I mean, Lowe's obviously, he got 6th place worth of points, which is, better than we've seen last year. But
hey, it was only 3.3 off. He was only 3.3 back too, which I think says a lot.
Exactly.
I think for me, Sam in that race, to me, he did a couple kind of little dive bomb moves that created gaps. It created gaps, I think, and those gaps are hard to make up once. Because I think he had the pace at the end of the race too. He was very fast at the end, and Augusto Fernandez did a great job finishing 5th. We didn't talk about him much yet, but Sam did a good job. Again, a guy who had a horrendous year last year, and by his standards, and he could see the leaders crossing the finish line this time, which is good. And I saw a tweet from him or an Instagram thing where he's like, "Hey, I got 10 more points in the bank than I had when I got here." I think that there's a number of people that have learned what Marquez has done, as spectacular as he is. I think there's a lot of guys that have taken note of what he has done in order to be there at the end for a world championship. So you look at like a Remy Gardner who'd love to get his first podium, who I think will win a race this year as well. He's probably pretty stoked with 4th. I think Sam is tremendous.
4th by 2.
Yeah,
by 2 thousandths of a second.
Thousandths
by the way,
of a second. Yeah, he almost got Schroeder.
Yeah.
I think Sam's going to be extremely happy with 6th. I think Marquez is going to be disappointed in 7th. Luca Marini, who was a bit of a title favorite and is Rossi's brother and all that, he ended up having the same shoulder surgery as Marquez during the offseason. Didn't know that. I didn't know that going into the weekend. But I think he's going to be really happy with 8th and the points he got there. And then really 9th place, Greg, and Enea Bastianini, he's the first of our Moto3 kids that bumped up this year into Moto2. And I thought he did a great job, as well as Fabio Di Gianantonio, who finished 11th, who actually had a lot of pace. He was our first speed up chassis. I think he's on the same bike. Fabio is on the same team bike that Quartararo was on last year. But he had tremendous pace. But the guy you got to think is extremely disappointed is Brad Binder, way back in 12th. Almost 17 seconds back. And where I'm going with that is when you just asked me the question about the Triumph, it still looked like Binder was trying to ride the Triumph like a Honda. Did you notice how much more backing in he was doing than everybody else?
I did, but also for Binder, he was the first of the KTM chassis.
Correct.
Too, Jay. So
correct.
The top 10 were on Calex's. Then you had a speed up.
Yep.
And then Binder was the first of the KTM chassis. And you don't see another KTM down there until Jorge Martin, who we know is his teammate, which is Jorge Martin's fast in 15 spots. So I haven't come to the conclusion yet whether it's Brad Binder trying to ride it like the Honda, inline fours, back it in, doing all that stuff, or if he's having to do that because the KTM chassis just isn't up to snuff right now.
And that's what I think I was going with. I don't know if it's so much a motor thing as it is a chassis thing for sure, because I know that the KTMs did struggle initially. And at the beginning of the race, Binder had some pace, and as the tires wore off, he just dropped like a stone. He went straight backwards. And that I think was definitely they're definitely frustrating for him, because it's going to be a long season. He without question is a title favorite. But to finish 12th, I would have, there's no way you would pick Brad Binder to finish 12th any weekend, doesn't matter where it is. So the fact that was the case was a struggle. And of course, I think we got to mention Joe Roberts. He ended up 22nd. I just saw an Instagram from him, and I haven't reached out to him yet to find out exactly what the problem was. But again, he's on that KTM chassis as well, isn't he? So, you look at some of that stuff, and his teammate Iker Lecuona had just a horrendous weekend, crashing big in the second practice, and then didn't even get through the first lap of the race.
Yeah, Buliga too, and Buliga has got to be one of the title contenders on that Sky Racing Team VR46 as well. Yeah, it's going to be a great season for Moto2. I think it could be a little bit spread out, more spread out than seasons we've seen in the past. Not so much because of the motors, because obviously with more horsepower and more torque, you can ride them differently. But I think what teams are going to adjust to the little bit of electronics they have too is going to make a difference, especially for race distance. And I'm not sure KTM has the resources to go back in and start redoing chassis, by the way. That's if they're stuck with that chassis for the entire year, because a lot of their resources are being spent in MotoGP now that they've extended from 2 factory bikes to 4 kind of situation. I'm just curious to find out how this KTM situation is going to pan out, because for those on the KTM chassis, it could be a super long season, and I would hate to see that happen.
Yeah, you got to think that all the riders on those bikes are probably, sharing little information, getting together, talking about, what they can change, what they can make different, what they saw in the race, and that kind of thing. So you're 100% right, Greg. I think right now KTM, and you know what, and they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. Those guys will get back on pace, and again, Doha's kind of a first race of the season, a little bit different place, a little bit different track. I'm sure they'll get sorted out. In Moto3, just jumping ahead real quick, the Moto3 class. I love watching the Moto3 class more than anything, because it always seems to throw up kind of wild cards, and especially at the beginning of the year, because you're going to get a bunch of kids that have come from other series around the world that are making their debuts and so on. But you had to be stoked for Kaito Toba to win on the Honda Team Asia bike. Hiroshi Oyama is the team manager of that bike, of that team. I met him once. My teammate was Hiroshi's brother when I did a little World Superbike, Shuhei, and they're the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And Kaito Toba was basically looking like he was without a ride. And there was a lot of people discussing, why did he get the job again? That was announced very early last year. He ends up winning the race by 53 thousandths over Lorenzo Della Porta, who is kind of a favorite this year in that championship, riding for the Leopard team. Third was Aaron Canet, who is on the new Max Biaggi Stelgarda team. I thought those team colors looked so good. I love the way that bike looked. And then you had Marcos Ramirez, again on the Leopard team, Celestin Vietti on Team VR46, Albert Arenas, Raul Fernandez, Nicolo Antonelli. Crazy ride for Romano Fenati that we'll get into here in a second. And then rounding out the top 10 was Jakob Kornfeld. So there were some regulars that we would be used to seeing in there. I think Vietti was a nice welcome to see him so far up, finishing 5th. There wasn't, again, Greg, there wasn't any like huge notable non-finishers. Maybe Jami Masia, who is in his sophomore year here of Moto3 and had a horrendous like debut race. He got hurt and broke his collarbone at the last test in Jerez at the end of the year. So he broke a couple months ago, rather. He broke his collarbone. He crashed out on the first lap with Sasaki. Binder, Suzuki, and Fangio all didn't finish as well. But other than that, what did you think of Toba's win?
Loved it. I mean, I really thought the thing that impressed me the most about Toba was how he actually raced. You know,
Yep.
when the other riders kept throwing things at him, he just kept fighting back, and he didn't just sit there and go, okay, well, I have to. He's 18 years old. All he did was just wanted to be at the front. Wanted to be at the front. I think he already understood what was the strength of his Honda and what wasn't, and he's the first Japanese rider to win in Moto3, the first Japanese rider to win in the lightweight class since 2007 or something like that. And he came from the Asia Cup, which is something that, MotoGP has been promoting. And I just think there's so many great storylines. And it's not just, to me, a rah-rah win. Like, oh my goodness, he won Qatar.
Yeah.
I think the way he actually raced, that if he has pace, we're going to see him stand on top of the box again. I don't think this is a flash in the pan. I don't think it's a fluke because of the racetrack. The Honda looks fast. Honda definitely
It was
dug
definitely
deep
faster than
and
the
found some stuff
KTMs.
over the offseason.
Yes.
So I'm pretty excited to see him. He's got a good smile. I loved his enthusiasm after he won. I mean, he was so pumped. I love the story around his team. I think it's great. And I think it's always great in a field that just seems knee deep with Italians and Spaniards to see someone else stand on the top of the box.
I think, yeah, I think the Hondas are fast. I thought Canet rode amazing. And it's really funny because when I started really watching this series, probably 4, 5, 6 years ago, it's really funny to see what an off season does to these guys and how they kind of get more mature and how they talk a little deeper and all those kind of things. But for Toba, what frustrated me more than anything this weekend is I've been in a pretty fun MotoGP pool for more or less the last 5 or 6 years, as you know. I had Toba on my list of guys, and I get talked out of him. And I was so mad at myself because I just look at some of these kids and you think, okay, they're 3 years in now. Now they know the tracks. Now they're supposed to be the little bit more veteran riders and this and that. And he just looked so polished up at the front. He didn't look out of control. He's another kid that's kind of been one of those kids that's had a hard time keeping it upright. And for him to win, I think was good. And for him to show that he could beat Della Porta and Canet in what was a pretty fair fight, I think was good. The Hondas definitely had pace over the KTM. You could see that Canet was capable of doing what he was doing there, but he just didn't quite have the legs down that front straightaway, did he? He just didn't quite have the pace. So and let's talk about Fenati for a second, because when you watch what he did over the weekend, those two things that really come out. Number one, I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm glad he's back racing. I'm bummed that he did what he did last year. I'm hoping that he learned from that.
I think he just proved. I think he proved he learned from that.
I agree. And but there was two gigantic mistakes that were made again, and I just sometimes scratch my head and think, how can this same stupid stuff, just carelessness, continue to happen to one person? And I mean, there's a pretty easy answer to that. It's just not being focused and concentrated. And at that track specifically, it's a 2-minute plus lap time on these little bikes around there, and Fenati was quick all weekend. He's on the right bike. It looks he's got a great team. I definitely think that this is a reprieve for his career, maybe the last chance, Greg, I would say, probably. And yet, with 3 minutes left to go in qualifying, now they're doing Moto2 and Moto3 have adopted the same kind of qualifying practices that MotoGP has. So they get like a qualifying practice 1 and a qualifying practice 2. And he'd gone right through to the second. But with 3 minutes to go, he was just still sitting there. And I'm thinking, well, he's got to get out because it's going to take you a little longer to get down pit lane. And then it's a 2+ minute lap on these bikes. And with 2:58 to go, he's sitting in his chair like nothing was happening. And of course, he rolls out at 1:58. So he doesn't get to do a fast lap and qualifies 12th or 13th or 14th, whatever it was. And makes his race extremely hard for himself in Moto3. And then during the race, he gets himself all the way up to the front, didn't he? And he got a warning on his thing about exceeding track limits. It wasn't you have to take the penalty loop. It was a warning. He either isn't paying attention or isn't listening that a warning's a warning. And he went out and did the penalty loop and literally cost himself, I would say, arguably a podium. Would you not?
No, of course.
I mean, he finished less than a second off the leaders. Yeah, finished. Yeah, fastest lap of the race. He finishes less than a second behind the leaders. But when you get in that big of a pack, you just can't go. You just can't go running through people. In a way, I think it's probably the worst thing that could have happened to him, and in a way, I almost think it's the best thing that could have happened to him because he's without question another title favorite this year. Should be been around long enough, and he's just got to stop making these careless errors
Yeah,
over and
but
over.
do you think he was a little oversensitive because of all the heat on him and
No
all the
question.
talking tos that he's had? And, maybe he just it was something that, maybe his crew or he just didn't go over as well as they should have. I mean, I think it's safe to say he's never going to make that mistake again.
It's understanding. It's understanding. Yeah, but Greg, I think really when this is your job, this is your job. And there's really, as a racer, once the race starts, there's only a couple of things that you really have to understand. If you're going to go outside the track limits, you have to understand what the procedure is. And I'm sure that during riders' meetings or MotoGP is very good about, Dorna is very good about sending out stuff and letting teams and riders know if something's changed or whatever. But I'm sure it's been gone over that in qualifying, if you exceed track limits, they are for sure going to wipe your time away. We saw that, I believe, God, who did I see that with? I saw that with somebody. I can't remember who it was right now, but he exceeded track limits. Time got wiped away. You know who it was? It was Antonio. Antonio did a lap that would have put him into QP1 in Moto2, but he exceeded the track limit, so they knocked him off, and he was like 11th or 12th or whatever it was, or so he didn't get through anyways. In qualifying, they're going to eliminate your lap, but in a race, there's so many different variables that can happen as far as getting nudged off the track or whatever the case might be. He got a warning. I think that's probably what came up. And I don't know because I didn't see his dashboard. It could have said go through the penalty loop, but it didn't sound like he had to do that. And unfortunately, it cost him the race. It's a matter of understanding your surroundings and paying attention to race direction. But you're right. He's probably a little bit sensitive. A lot of heat on him. Probably didn't want to make another mistake, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the only thing I can think of. Or
Yeah.
we all know it doesn't matter what we speculate. He blew it. He
Yeah.
blew it on that one.
Screwed up.
Although I do have to say that when Valentino saw, remember when we talked about on the podcast, that penalty loop or whatever, Valentino thought it would be 3 seconds. Finati ripped it. And I think that wasn't even 2 seconds or right around 2 seconds, they basically said. And when they were looking at timing and scoring was the difference, or 1.8
Yeah.
or something like that. So,
Yes.
and he finished 0.8 of a second back. So there's no question that mistake could have cost him a win. I mean, just on paper, you can see it cost him a win, but you got to get through all those riders anyway, and riders that are difficult to pass. And It just seemed like Toba wasn't going to be denied no matter what happened. I mean, it
was great.
The Moto3 race was so good for me. I actually had goosebumps and held my breath for Toba at the end of that race because I was like, he's 18 years old. He hasn't raced at this level before. Is it going to get to him? And it didn't seem to be out of control at all. He didn't make any big mistakes he had to recover from. And I just like him. I like him as a racer. And I just think that we're going to see more of him. So if you didn't take him in your pool, you're a moron.
I am a moron. You ain't lying. My picks stink. I'm going to get smoked this year, but hopefully not. We'll see. Hey, listen, we are an hour into this podcast. We've talked about MotoGP for a long time. I know we still got a lot of show to fill. And, the thing is, Greg, is that we're just at that time of year now. So hopefully people don't get sick of listening to us. But let's go on now because we've got round 2 this weekend. It seems like it was just last weekend was Phillip Island, but we got round 2 of the Motu World Superbike Championship in Thailand. And a lot of the talk so far has stemmed around Alvaro Bautista and his Phillip Island performance. And we know how good that is. But Greg, I think that there's going to be more to it this weekend. When I say there's going to be more to it, first off, I'm curious of what your thoughts are going into it. I think, we talked a lot about the hype. We talked a lot about what Bautista is, the feel-good story of it. Will he have all of his own way again this weekend in Thailand?
I mean, I don't think so. I think we've kind of beaten a dead horse in saying that Phillip Island is very unique in terms of the testing leading up to it and all that stuff. I think now you go to a track where Ducati is a little bit behind in terms of the information that they have and those types of things. So yeah, I don't think it's a repeat of what we saw at Phillip Island. If you look at last year's race results from Thailand, I mean, it tells a different story. Jonathan Ray went out, won that first race by 1.5 seconds. I think who won race 2? Chaz won it on the
Chaz, yeah.
Ducati.
Yep.
And you had Vandermark and Lowe's, and was that where the crash happened, where
Yes.
teammates got together in the second race?
This is where I think Eugene broke his pelvis last year, I believe. Yeah, I believe this is the track. When you say the teammates got together, I'm trying to think what track that was.
Sykes and didn't Sykes,
and Johnny?
No, I guess that wasn't it. No, it wasn't, because
No.
Johnny ended up finishing 4th in that one, 6.5 seconds back. Sykes DNF'd. I can't remember.
He had brake issues in the second round last year.
That's what it was,
Or second race last year. Remember, he was like just overshooting everywhere and having big issues. And, Greg, I kind of see a little bit of the same thing I saw at Phillip Island, I think. And I'll tell you the reason why. The first part of this race, the first part of the track, I've never been there, but I know the track because I've watched it enough. It looks very, very, very fast. And turn 2 going down into what I believe they call turn 2 comes off a very fast straightaway. And unless anybody can really get close enough to Batista, or if they can get near enough to him to get by him down there, maybe a couple of the guys can draft with him and then try to pass him down there. Then after you come through that kind of long 180, it's another big fast straightaway, and it goes back uphill into a very fast left-hander. And then from that point, you get into a more technical section of the track that's very flowing, but I think it's very hard to pass. The last corner there, to me, is one of the worst turns I can think of being a last corner. That we've seen a lot of accidents and a lot of things like that in. But I have to tip myself to thinking that Batista is going to do a little bit of what he did at Phillip Island. I think he'll be very difficult to beat at this kind of circuit. This is going to be a very tough track for the Ducati to not win at. I think that they have a very good chance again for Batista at least winning 2 out of 3.
Okay. Well, agree to disagree. I think Johnny Ray's going to mop up, and that's the way it's going to be. World Superbike this weekend coming up. If you don't have the package, by the way, you can see it on beIN Sports Television Network, which I do not have. So let's move on, Jason, from World Superbike, and let's talk about short track, flat track racing. Daytona TT is coming up. There's a lot of social media hype about American Flat Track season opener, the TT, the Daytona TT, and there's some big names on the entry list, of course. But when it comes to the singles class, Jay, I think a lot of the hype is there's 48 riders that will even make it into the evening program, and I think 30 in the premier class, which is the twins, but only 16 make the program. So there are new rules in place for the twins, okay? So Indian doesn't change, but everybody else in the twins class gets 2 millimeters more throttle body, now up to 40 millimeters, and they also get an extra 150 cc's. So the Indian remains at 750. All the other bikes are allowed to go to 900. Jason, it's a fun race to watch. It's Thursday night, I believe. You know some people that are going down there to race in the singles class. Do you think it's worth all the hype, the Daytona TT race that they're building leading up to this one Thursday?
It's Daytona, yeah, of course. I mean, I remember when we used to have to go to Volusia County Fairgrounds, we'd always rip over there after the races on Friday. The schedule at Daytona, Bike Week to me is not what Bike Week used to be, but I think that like the scheduling and what they're doing with it this year, running on the tri-oval. I believe they're actually running part of this track up onto the tri-oval. I saw some pictures of them kind of going through things a little bit. Johnny Lewis has been a part of that. I saw Jay Springsteen even talking about it. I've talked to a couple of the riders that say they think it's going to be pretty cool. So it's definitely it's going to look different than it did last year. Yeah, of course. I think you got to have the hype. I think that Daytona TT has been something that we've seen kind of transform over the last 2 or 3 years. 2 years ago, I wasn't as crazy about the track as I was last year. And then this year, there's a new element to it where they're actually putting a little bit of pavement into it. So I'm definitely intrigued. I'll be watching it Thursday night. Yeah, for sure, to see. And what's crazy is, like you say, Greg, there's 48 guys make the evening program. I don't know what the entry list is for the singles class. It's got it. I bet you there's 100 guys trying to qualify.
No, yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
Just got to be. There might not. I don't know if another form of racing right now that I could think of in my mind that has that many guys and is that hard to actually get into. And when you think that they narrow it down to the 16 guys make the main. It's pretty incredible when when you think that you could go all that way, and if you're not one of the top 48 times, then you're on the truck. So and they don't get like a ton of practice at these events. It's not like they get to go out for a 30-minute session. It's very quick, very, they break them up into groups, and you go out there and you get your 4 or 5 laps of practice, and then you get another shot at practice, and then you line up for the race. So we got a lot of road racers. A lot of our boys are going to be there. I know Jake Lewis is going, obviously, JD, Nick McFadden, I believe is going down. Alex Dumas. Who's that?
PJ Jacobson, of course.
I don't think he's doing Daytona. I talked to Barry this week. I don't think PJ's doing Daytona. He's got it like a select 6 rounds, I think, that he's doing. And I don't think
really?
Daytona's
okay. I know
one
he
of
was
them.
down. I know he was down.
He's
in
down
Florida,
there.
So I just assumed he was. Yeah.
He's down there riding a little bit at Jennings, I think, Greg, but I don't think he's doing the TT. You got Rispoli doing it. There's
Corey Alexander.
Yep,
right?
Corey Alexander, of course. Corey Alexander's doing it. So there's a group of road racers that are down there to go just be part of the Daytona festivities, which is good.
Here's the thing that's very interesting. I had a conversation yesterday with Jared Mees, of course, who's the reigning national champion, and he first won the national title, his first national title at 23 years old. And one of the things he said that makes flat track so difficult is that every time you get on the racetrack, it's a different track because of the change of temperature, the change in humidity, the sunshine, and the track just constantly changes. And so one of the things that Jared pointed out about younger people, or even like say road racers that are just coming to try it, isn't that they're not good racers. Is more than likely what happens is they don't understand, because they don't have the experience, what is going on with the track. So like, for instance, Jared told me, he said, look, if I get on a track in the morning, say, or whatever, or afternoon, heading to a night program, and we're not the fastest person, we have experience enough to know that the settings that we have in this motorcycle are going to work in 2 sessions from now. So we don't start chasing settings and doing crazy things. We know that what we have is going to work for us as we get to the night program. So we just need a bike that's going to be fast enough to get us there. Where a lot of times what happens with younger riders, or with people that just kind of dip their toe in every now and then, is that they start chasing setup because it won't work. And then they get out to the next, session or the next time on the track, and it's so different that they're completely lost. And so, and that was stemming from a conversation I had with Jared about why does it seem to be that the older dirt trackers tend to be the fastest ones? And he was just like, it's experience, and here's why. So it'll be challenging. Jared definitely said there's nothing spectacular about Daytona's dirt or anything else, that's different from other places. It matures, and it gets faster and it gets slower, just like any other racetrack. But he's pretty excited about the asphalt part of it as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch.
And that'll be on fanschoice.tv on Thursday night. So if you're looking for that on the World Wide Web, check that out. And a friend of ours, Brad Baker, is going to be the color commentator. I saw that announcement come out today, which is good.
You got somebody in there with a lot of experience, and it's going to be cool to be able to listen to him just kind of break down the things he sees in with the pavement section. It's going to be new to him to watch that, so that'll be kind of fun to kind of see how that race pans out on Thursday. The real reason that people used to go to Daytona was the Daytona 200, Greg, and over the years, obviously, I feel like that race has lost a lot of its luster over the years, and that's not being negative towards the race. That's just the reality of it. I think motorcycles, especially big bikes, thousands and stuff, kind of outgrew that place. I think the last year we went there was guys doing 206, 208 mile an hour, I believe. So, when you have just walls right next to you, that isn't the best thing, but doesn't ever stop me from tuning in and watching the 200 at the beginning of the year, because it usually leads for some great racing. And if you look at the entry list for this year, I'm definitely intrigued. Obviously, we've got 4-time Superbike champion Josh Hayes that's going to be in that mix. You got Corey West is down there. I think Brandon Posh, who's going to be racing over in BSB this season again. He's going to be down there doing this race for TSE, which I think which is good. Barrett Long, who went over to Phillip Island with me, I got to know him pretty well. How about Kyle Wyman? Like, he doesn't have enough on his plate right now at all. Kyle's going to be down there doing it. Jason DeSalvo, another good guy that you're going to see. Bobby Fong is going to be down there on his brand new ride with Orich and those guys on the M4 team. So it's going to be good to see Bobby kind of get his feet wet on that Suzuki, especially in a race situation. Of course, you can't forget Danny Eslick, what's he won it for, Greg? 4 times?
Yeah, I think so.
Four times has Danny won it? 4 or 5 times? So Danny's obviously going to be a very hard guy to beat down there. How about another one of our MotoAmerica regulars who I think is kind of going to be sneaking in under the radar, but Jason Aguilar is going to be tough. Jeff May. I'm just going down kind of the list of people that we are knowing, and there's going to be some people. Sean Dillon Kelly, another guy that's going to be part of our MotoAmerica Championship this year with the M4 team. It's going to be his first race on that Suzuki as well. So we'll see him out there. But I just think that there's going to be a group of guys this year that are going to make this race a little bit more interesting to watch. Who you got?
John Ashmead.
I saw he's on there again. John Ashmead. I was there when John Ashmead won in 1989. I know I'm dating myself. I wasn't racing then, but I was there when he won the Daytona 200. I witnessed it, saw it, and he's still there.
Yeah, still doing it. He's still out there pounding around. Who do I have? I'm going to have to say, even though he hasn't had a lot of 600 experience recently, I'm going to have to go Josh Hayes for a couple of reasons. He knows how to win it. He is probably one of the best riders I know on cold tires, meaning outlap. His outlap is usually pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And so usually with the 200, what we see is a pack of people that are going to all ride together and just chill, right? Draft and pass, do whatever. No one's really going to be able to break the first pit stop. The first pit stop will then separate a few people. And if Hayes has a clean pit stop on that MP13 racing machine, then he's going to be the fastest one out of the box on the first lap. So I think usually it's that middle stint, even though they don't get together, Jay, it's that middle stint. And then after that second pit stop, that usually shakes them up and you'll see 2 or 3. But I'm not sure if Hayes is going to be able to get away from, Danny, or I just don't know, because I've kind of been, removed from that pack of racers, but there are a lot of talented big name. I mean, Tyler O'Hara's in there as well.
Tyler. Yeah, he made. So that's pretty cool. Got Floyd Landis, I believe, behind him. So I know he made the big trek. I think he's up Petaluma. I know Petaluma. I think he's up north. So he made the big trek across country. Follow him on Instagram. So I saw him. So,
but the amount of entries, I haven't even actually counted them up, but it's a good pile of people.
Yeah, there's a guy in this race that nobody over here has even heard of that is extremely fast. And he's going to be on bike number 2. His name's Gwen Giovanni. And I raced World Endurance race. I raced World Endurance against him. And he was factory rider over there for a couple different of the big teams. Always wanted to race Daytona. And the only reason I know that is because yesterday he was testing at Jennings, and one of my close friends that's down there, Johnny LeConte, he was down there. And of course, Johnny was texting me, hey, there's a couple guys here from Europe that know you, and this and that. Turns out it's Gwen, and I'm not positive on this, but I think he might. I know he's going to ride a Suzuki, and I don't know if he's done some sort of rental ride or not, but it'll be interesting to see what bike he shows up on. But he's never been to Daytona. That's going to be the hardest part for him. But he'll surprise some people. He's pretty fast.
They got a good mix of bikes in this field too, by the way. You have Triumph 675, you have Ducati 848s, of course, Kawasaki ZX6Rs, the Yamaha R6, Suzuki GSXRs. It's a good blend of motorcycles. But, pit stops. It's, there's an MV Agusta in the mix. So it'll be interesting to see what pit stop strategies are going to win this race, or mistakes in the pits. And that's one thing about the Daytona 200. You can say based on lap times, we predict this, we can predict that. But the bottom line is, if the crew doesn't do the job in the pits, what makes the Daytona 200 so unique is that it can be won or lost, especially that second pit stop. So
you just get so many guys.
I can't wait to watch it.
And traffic, traffic's the hard thing. These guys will be in traffic on the 4th lap of the race. You get a lot of guys that don't even race.
By the way, who do you have, by the way?
Well,
I mean, I really can see five or six riders winning. Even Posh, if he could put himself in a situation and get a draft, but it's experience. You put Josh Hayes 3rd, 2nd, or 1st. It's hard to bet against him.
Well, if you took a podium in no uncertain order, the podium, I definitely see Josh and Danny being there. You have to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Josh and Danny, I think, are the
Mm-hmm.
two guys too that will be the best at getting out of pit lane, like you say, on the outlap. The outlap and even the in-lap is important. On the in-lap, if you see guys going in before you go in, it's so important that you keep pushing on that in-lap. But the outlap is so key on on brand new rubber, getting out of the pits and going the long way around the old International Horseshoe and getting out there. That's where the race really breaks up, and that's where Danny's really won the race. If you've watched the last couple of years, Danny's been so good at getting out of the pits after the first one. All of a sudden, he's got a 3-second lead, and it's really hard to close down 3-4 seconds when you got a guy basically doing the same lap times, because even if he gets held up in traffic, inevitably at some point you're going to get held up in traffic. So I think
Jeff
pit
May
stops
can be there.
and
Jeff May's another one who's finished on the podium last couple of years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I got to look at. I'll tell you right now, my wild card without question, Brandon Posh. I think Brandon that kid loves being on a bike. He trains all the time. If you don't follow Brandon on Instagram, you should, because he is just continuously doing everything he can. This isn't a kid that has upteenth amount of dollars behind him. He just grinds and grinds and grinds and earns and does whatever he can. And the TSC bike has been really good the last 3-4 years. So he'd be a guy that could possibly win it, like you said. I thought that was a good choice. But I think the top three, I think it's going to be, Danny and Josh are going to be there on the podium. And I think it's a bit of a coin flip between Aguilar and Kyle Wyman. Kyle's just got so much on his plate. The thing for me with Kyle is I don't think he's ridden the bike, because I know who was testing it for him last week. Okay.
Yeah.
So he hasn't even ridden the bike, the poor guy. And he's been traveling all over the place trying to get these Ducatis together. And I know when he gets there, he'll be very focused. But I think that his first couple practice sessions are going to be key. If he can get up to speed fairly quickly, and that's what I'm going to be looking for when I look at the times. If he can get up to speed fairly quickly, not have any problems, I don't know the crew he's got around him. I think Jason Aguilar, with his size, again, pit stops being the thing, I think he's got a couple experienced guys on his team. But Jason Aguilar would be very tough to shake off. But it's the experience of running the 200 I don't think Jason has that Danny and Danny and Josh have. You notice I didn't really pick a winner. I just said those guys are going to be on the podium.
Again, you can see the Daytona 200 on fanschoice.tv as well. Let's move on to Supercross, Jason, where Eli Tomac took a win over Cooper Webb, Marvin Musquin, Blake Baggett, Joey Savacci, Zach Osborne, Justin Hill, Ken Roxon in 8th, Justin Brayton in 9th, and our boy Chad Reed in 10th spot. How did Daytona Supercross look to you?
Well, it was the easiest choice of winners, I think, that we've had this year, because it's, and by the way, Ricky Carmichael, in a non-Supercross rider's view, built their best track of the year. And I know he has a little bit more room, and I know he's got all that stuff, but the track for me was fun because there were so many different elements to the track. And I know Ricky's been designing the track down there for 10 years or more now, but I thought he did such a good job of mixing it up. Eli Tomac was, to me, I already picked him after Atlanta because it's kind of an outdoory type of track. It seems like the gnarlier the kind of track there is, the better chance he's got to do what he did. And there was plenty of room to pass. So I felt like even if he got a bad start, that said, he didn't get a bad start. He got a fairly good start and got himself up in that top 3 to 5. It was a different type of start too, Greg. It came off, I've never seen them start where they started this time. And it went kind of right towards the tri-oval. And the first turn there wasn't as gnarly, even though we saw some accidents. But I think if you got off the line on the inside, you were okay. Cooper, again, damage control, limited it. I think Musquin made a big mistake on the last lap. It would have been great confidence for Musquin to pass his teammate, on the last lap, but wasn't.
But Marvin made mistakes all race long.
He did. I mean? He made mistakes all race long, and you sit there and you think about it, and it's, man, you can't think it can't be anything but mental. You got this guy that just showed up and jumps on your bike, goes out and wins 5 races, leading the championship, and you're catching him. You're catching him hand over fist, and then you keep screwing up every time you get to his rear tire. So that for me was a little bit hard to watch. It was too bad to see Roxon go down, but he came from a long way back, kept himself in the championship, which is good. So I thought it was a great race. I thought it was fun to watch. I just know that Daytona is such a sufferfest, for those guys, because it's such a hard track. Do you remember when we could watch the race and you could literally we would come down out of the suites across and we'd walk across the racetrack. And I just remember sitting there and I'd walk across that track and I'd think to myself, I don't even know if I could actually ride a motorcycle around this track, let alone race it, because it just was so gnarly. So
Yeah, I mean, I've worked at as a pit reporter and been on the track during the race, just thinking to myself, wow,
yeah,
it's gnarly, and I've seen some really messed up tracks with some sections that you would just take you completely out of your rhythm, or you really have to be dialed in. So, but what about our boy Chad Reed? You want to hear how he
let's hear
finished?
it.
How
I want to hear
his
about Chad.
assessment?
Let's hear it.
All right, so Chad finishes in 10th, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, it was Daytona was. I love Daytona. Like it's one of my favorite races and weekends of the year. Each and every year has its challenges. I feel like it's so hard to build. Like the way the track develops and stuff like that. It's always a challenge. But the track this year, I think it was one of the better tracks. I really think my only personal complaint was the lack of berms. I think that they used so much dirt in the racetrack that they ran out of dirt and every turn was a flat turn. So the turns were a little bit on the, follow the leader side of things. But other than that, like the racetrack was fun, like some huge rhythm sections. Felt like almost like we were racing straight rhythm with a few turns in it. So it was fun and it got rough and brutal like Daytona always gets. For me, it was a little bit of an opposite weekend, like I felt really comfortable and competitive all day long, which normally in the mornings, like I take a little bit of time to get up to speed and, the focus is always the night program and kind of had that same thought process, but I knew that getting a good start and getting start position was probably really key this weekend. So, like I definitely focused on my qualifying time and practice and I was a little better in that area this weekend. And for whatever reason, they turned the lights on and dropped the gates and I didn't have the same feeling, like I was a little off. And that was a little disappointing to feel that way when I felt good all day. So I was kind of a little bit surprised on my lack of feeling and speed in the night program. So now the top 10 wasn't a horrible weekend, but definitely know that I had much more in me than 10th.
Time's running out for Chad to get a win this year, if it is his last year, though.
Hard to say. Yeah, it's with Chad. I watch and it's a like I said, it's a consistent second, and I know he's working hard to try to figure out where that is. And you and I talked a little bit this morning about being able to look at Lit Pro and some of the stuff that they use. I'm sure he knows the places he's working on, and like you said, like he even said that without the berms and stuff, the way he maybe liked it, maybe the way his bike works better. There were some definite flat kind of corners there. But yeah, he's proven that he can get up there. So it's just now, and that would have been a track. I mean, I'll never forget when Chad led that mud race there. And oh my God, it was the worst thing you could ever see in your life, this mud race. And then his bike broke on the last lap with 6 turns to go or something, Greg. Do you remember that when he just parked his bike in the mud?
Heartbreaker. Yeah.
Oh, so bad. But yeah, it's, I expected Chad. I had him up my list a little bit that night. I figured he'd be in that 6th to 8th place area. So you could hear him sound a little discouraged finishing 10th.
Yeah, and there's only 7 rounds left, so I did ask him, all right, so what's next in terms of developing this bike? I mean, is it kind of the way it is, you got to race it, or what?
For me, no, I mean, I'm pulling into the test track right now, and we're all in on trying to improve, and my issue that I have is more just the bike is great, like I feel like it's really good. I would like it to be a little bit bigger of a window, like have a little bit more of an opportunity when, like, I'm struggling from practice to racing this past weekend. The turns and how we turned changed quite a bit. And I felt like I didn't see that coming. And when it happened, like it was a bit of a surprise. And then I was a little bit scared to make a change for the main event when I had felt good all day. And I started questioning a little bit, like, am I really feeling what I'm feeling? Is it me? Is it track? What is it? And so I didn't make any changes for the night, for the main event, should I say, and it kind of had the same issues. So I just think that right now I need a little bit bigger window of if we're turning really sharp or we're railing around the outside and somewhere in between, I need a bit better feeling of that. So that's what we're going to focus on today, is trying to trying to get me in and out of turns, in 3 to 4 different directions, basically, to see if we can build a bigger window and allow me, the rider, to just feel a little bit more natural. Like every rider has something that they're naturally better at doing. So generally, whether the bike's good or bad, you can always maintain that feeling. But I seem like the tracks are developing in a way that is kind of new to me. I haven't really seen them develop this way, that much. So I need to improve me better as a rider, but I feel like I need a little bit of assistance from the bike too. So that's what we're going to try to help, work on today.
Where me naturally as a rider, where I've been really good is actually like leaving the pits.
Yeah, I was waiting to hear your saying on that because I don't really remember you being like really good at most stuff when you're actually on a bike, but leaving, I would say coming in the pits, I think was better because you're getting off the track and get out of everybody's way. So I think coming into the pits was definitely more of a thing for you. You. But it's great hearing a guy like Chad say he's still trying to, we say it all the time. He's trying to learn. He's trying to figure this out. He still wants it. I think he's
you get what he's saying about that window, right? Like, I mean, I kind of got what he was saying, where he's just trying to get the bike to work, I guess, in a wider range of conditions. And that's what happens as those tracks are changing so much this year and differently from what they've done in the past. He's just trying to get it all sorted out. So
it's weird. It'd be really interesting to see what he really thinks, like what is really different. Like I know some of the track designs are different, and just the way things are kind of shaping up are a little different, but yeah, and it's great. Hopefully he had a good test today and he got things got things better. So let's hope that that's the case. And as usual, thanks to the 22 for being on our podcast. So cool getting this insight every week. So let's move forward to
the end of the
course.
Show?
Nope.
To the end of the show?
No.
What?
We're going to talk about this fantasy Supercross again, just right quick.
Do we have to?
G-Dub, I really think that it's time that you just stop. You don't need to compete in anything anymore. You got a whopping 15 points last week. Nice work. Hey, and I even gave you a tip. I even tried to help you. I did try to help you. There's just no helping.
You know what? I mean, first of all, why would I trust you? Okay, because you know that I'm knocking on the door. You didn't have.
Just so our guys know in the podcast who you're actually going against. Greg didn't have Tomac in the top 5 originally. Didn't have him. Am I right?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, you didn't. And you actually took my advice. I told you to take him to win, but you took him to finish second, so that's part of 5 of your 15. Now, let's talk about a much bigger deal. Hughes 721 just blew our whole fantasy Supercross wide open. You know why? Because you get 6 choices, and he got all 6 correct. Absolutely smoked us.
Perfect.
133 points.
133 points. Unbelievable.
It's insane. I mean, you got full props.
A tip of the cap to Hughes 721, and thank you for not having some goofy username like Beat G-Dub, because that one's horrible. But Hughes 721.
Travis is killing you now.
Not only that, I know. Not only that is now Hughes 721 with 435 points is leading our group by 40 points, but also moved up to 440th. The only person even to break 2,300 in our group.
Amazing. That's amazing. No, but that shows you have a big week and it can get you up there. Lugnut 69 second. My boy Alex Fuller, he came through this week and he had a bunch of points as well. And it's weird because normally I can just pull this stuff up, G-Dub, as we're doing it. But for some reason I can't. Every now and then it gets kind of weird. But Alex had a bunch of points. I'm 4th. I can't get out of 4th. I'm like 4th every week. It doesn't matter.
You still had 41 points though. Yeah, Alex had 75 points.
75 points. Just killed it. And Fatchy 17, what happened? Because I believe in the message stuff, didn't he message saying that he's trying to beat us or something? Or am I just wrong? Yeah, he did, right?
Yeah. Well, and by the way, Hughes left the message too. Good week, need another like that. Yeah, no kidding. Hughes 721. Like, not in our group you don't need one, but overall,
that's amazing.
Sure you do.
What a stud.
He might even, or he or she, I don't know who 721 is, but they do prizes every week. And like last week,
Had to have gotten
somebody won a Bell Moto 9 Carbon Flex helmet and the Supercross 2 video game. All that stuff was worth $709, and somebody called Too Tall 48 won it with 133. There were a couple riders last week, that got 133 total. So we'll see if our boy Hughes 721 wins anything.
Got to get something. Get all of them right. That's. I mean, to do that, and then what do we got?
By the way, beat G Dub. Okay, Travis. He wrote a couple days ago. Forgot my picks, G Dub. You may have a chance this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't happen. Dude, yeah, so maybe that's your strategy, Travis. Yeah, because Travis,
that's what Corey Alexander's been doing.
62 points, dude. 62 points. He had Webb to win, Eli Tomac, Muscan, Roxon 4th, Blake Baggett 5th. And his big winner, though, is he picked Chad in 10th. A lot of people did.
Yeah. See, Chad, I got too much respect for you. I'm never going to pick you to finish outside top 5. So 6, somewhere in there. So see that? All these guys that chose you to finish 10th, it may look smart, but I got more respect. See? So I won't tell you we're great.
Shout out, though, Jason, to Half-Season Joker. Half-Season Joker came in and scored 41 points right out of the gate and is sitting 48th in the pool. And I'm actually, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see me up there in 39th.
Yeah, Greg, he's 180 points behind you. This was the first weekend he's done it. 180 points behind you. I got him beating you by the end of the year.
You're stupid. Shut up. You're so dumb.
Anyways, get on there. Have a look at what we're doing. RM Fantasy Supercross. It's been a lot of fun this year. A lot of my friends been on it. We've had a good time with that. So make sure you have a look at it, G-Dub.
All right, that means it's time, Jason, for our Quick Shift segment presented by ARAI. Jay, for 3 generations, ARAI has been making some of the world's best helmets. And of course, ARAI helmets meet all safety standards. But they also pride themselves the blend of engineering tech and human craftsmanship. That makes an ARAI helmet fit better and feel better, which also protects you better. Your head is worth it, so visit ARAIAmericas.com for more information on tech, fit, and paint jobs. ARAIAmericas.com, because you owe it to you. All right, Jay, we kind of avoided this conversation a little bit, all right, for our Quick Shift segment, which I'm going to give you 60 seconds to talk about this, and then I'm going to give you the little bell in case you're new to the podcast. All right, and we're going to move on to the next topic because we're already deep into this one. But there was an Aero device or a wing on that Ducati on that GP19 version. It was on the swing arm. Well, it turns out that Aprilia, KTM, Honda, and Suzuki factory teams all filed protests. MotoGP panel rejected it because it wasn't on the fairing, it was on the swing arm. So it's now been elevated to MotoGP Court of Appeals, which I'd never even heard of before. What do you think about this whole ruckus with Ducati and this little extra arrow that they have on the swing arm, also on the front of the bike, like covering, like on the front wheel? What do you think about all this stuff?
Oh man, that's the only reason Dovi won. No, Greg,
I'm not saying that, but
it is a no point. Like it's nothing. For me, obviously those guys, they're trying to, what it sounds like the protest is more about is where do we draw the line on the rules, if it's going to be one way or the other. That's not the reason why Dovi won. Marquez even said afterwards, I lost on the track tonight, and it wasn't because of that piece. So I find it funny that they're always talking about trying to get heat in the tires, and then they say that this piece is to try to keep the tires cooler. I don't really know what to believe with it,
baloney.
Yeah, look, it is what it is. It seems like Ducati comes out with all the cool bits all the time. Everybody's behind. This guy, Gigi, really must seem like he knows what he's doing, huh, G-Dub?
He knows what he's doing. And what people might not realize is that those wings are not about keeping the front end down, maybe a little bit, but it's about creating dirty air behind the bike, just like Formula One. And if you look at a couple passes that Rins tried to make or Marquez tried to make, it was like you get up right next to Ducati and start to go by, and all of a sudden it was like a head shake, like a tank slapper almost. And so it's about dirty air. And I just think that it's something that's going to have to be looked into. I'm not sure what the solution is, but my guess is Ducati's not going to have that bit on the bike for too much longer, only because people are belly aching about it so loudly. Just my thought. All right, that's our Quick Shift segment presented by ARAI. So let's move to the race calendar, Jason. On the 14th, of course, which is on Thursday, we're going to have Flat Track, and we're going to have Supercross from Indy on Saturday. NHRA Pro Stock motorcycle stuff is included in that. Gainesville, Florida. World Superbikes in Thailand. GNCCs in Washington, Georgia. AMA West Hare Scrambles. going on as well. All that this weekend. Get out and watch some racing. Your attendance is key to help all motorcycle racing series maintain and grow. So get out there and do that. Right, Jay?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you can't be part of it, get out and watch a little bit of it. It's a good time of the year. Everybody's been locked in their houses in the winter, and it's a good time for that. And then, next week, Greg, we got American Flat Track, we got Daytona TT, Daytona 200, World Superbike, and a lot of other things. So, we got World Supersport, I think, going as well. It's a good time for us.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. It'll be a nice short podcast next week, too. But thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. I know I speak for Jason when I say I really appreciate it. You want to say the goodbyes today, Jay?
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening, obviously, and to our sponsors. Again, thanks to Chad Reed as well for being on. And let's look forward to having another great weekend, Greg. I can hardly wait to watch it all.